Yeah, hey, it's Gerard Bull, the headhunter from US Human Capital, and I'm joined, as always, by Rob Hutton, 30-year or roughly there, veteran of the home building industry, ex-regional president, as you know, from Lennar, business mentor and coach at Rob Hutton Consulting. How you doing, Rob?
Everything is good. Thanksgiving is behind us, and it was a lot of fun. We had a house full. As I mentioned earlier, 35 some odd people, barely controlled chaos, but we got through it.
Look, in this short series of From Help I Work in Home Building, what we're really looking at doing is focusing on driving your career forward into 2025, how to get to the top of your game. We're going to try and do it in bite-sized chunks of 10 to 20 minutes. I'm not sure if we're able to keep it down to that time, but we're going to give it a go anyway. And really, in part one of this mini series, we're going to talk about execution and meeting your numbers. So, Rob, I'm assuming at this stage the mothership has already set the targets of what they are looking for their division presidents and vice presidents and rest of the team members to hit. Now, first of all, from being a regional president, just so that some people can understand how those numbers are set, from the top, what are the discussions at the C-suite level, and then how do they percolate down into the divisions, into the disciplines, and into the rest of the people within the division?
Yeah, so the mothership has sensitivity to what the street wants, Wall Street, that is, with public companies. And if
Mm.
not, your shareholders, your stakeholders, if you're private, may have their ambitions about where the company goes. But in at least in my career, it's always been public companies, and that meant that we had to pay strict attention to the street's expectations at that stage in the cycle, wherever we were. And if we're in the expansion phase of the business cycle, Wall Street was looking for a different kind of growth scenario as to sales, as to deliveries, as to community count that drives those sales and deliveries. And if we are on the contraction phase of the cycle, well then that would be a different discussion altogether. That would be more of a focus, not so much on top line growth and EPS, but it would be more on SG&A management. And can we find a way to be profitable during the contraction phase of the cycle? Bottom line is that we would begin discussions probably 5 6 months prior to the beginning of the new fiscal year about what would be realistic. And so what that would mean
And
at the
we're
regional
sorry,
level
Rob,
is,
we're talking about that discussion with the division level, or is that at the regional level?
yeah, the regional presidents would have discussions with the CEO and the chairman of the board
Mm.
about what targets they wanted. And then we had to take that and say, all right, can we execute that? Because the regional is just only as good as the divisions underneath her or him. I wanted to start first and foremost with community count because we called it ACC, active community count, is really the show. If you say, well, I want to grow by 20%, but you don't have the community count to be able to generate the sales, which will then generate the deliveries to be able to hit those targets of, let's say, 20%, well, then it's a mindless discussion. You don't have the community count to be able to do that. If you don't, well, then what is realistic? And what you find at the regional level is that some of your divisions are, maybe they're just getting, their full stride, and so they're in high growth mode. Others might be real cash cows where they're big already. And for me, big was 4,000, 4,500, 5,000 a year. That's a division that's quite large, as opposed to one that might be at 500 or 1,000 a year. That is galloping, and they've got plenty of room to grow, assuming that their market is decent size. But the bigger ones, those that are already at 3, 4, 5,000 a year, let's say in Houston, for example, massive market, Dallas, massive market. And so it wouldn't be unusual for them to be in that 4 to 5,000 range. are they realistically going to be able to grow like a smaller division would? So you have to roll all of them together as the regional and hopefully come close to what the mothership wants. Maybe you can do better, but quite often it's a tug of war between the corporate office and the regions and the divisions. With the division president saying, I can't do it, no way, impossible, game's over. And the regionals and the CEO saying, come on, show me your community count, show me your sales per community, show me your product innovation that might allow you, after all, to hit the numbers that we're looking for. So it's a giant tug of war with typically the division operator saying, no, I can't, that's too fast. And those above saying, come on, you can, you must. This is what Wall Street expects of us. So, you've got time. Now we're months away from the new fiscal year. You've got time to accelerate some of those new communities that maybe weren't slated to open until 6 months into the new fiscal year. You can do something perhaps to accelerate them. Maybe you could go and find a plug and play deal. That means a finish lot deal, for example, and it could pick up another 50 lots, 100 lots, something like that. But whatever it is, do something to try to approach the targets that the corporate offices are asking for. That's a very good way to manage skillfully one's career. Give the mothership what it wants, right? And if you fail to give the mothership what it wants, your longevity meter may be flashing bright orange, at least, maybe red in the corner of your eye. That means you're not giving the corporate offices or the regional office what they're looking for, and that's growth. Public companies, they want to grow. It's a voracious appetite for growth. Most companies are that way, even if they're private. They want to grow, and that growth is for them largely a function of how much capital they can raise. For those that are public companies, they have access to the public debt and equity markets, and so it's simply easier for them to attract capital, to go get capital for the purpose of growth. So, there's some limitations, balance sheet limitations that way, which I appreciate. But anyhow, that's the backdrop to the development of a new budget beginning 6 months or so before the budget needs to be dialed in. And by, let's say, if it's a fiscal and calendar year sync up, well, then by December, you'd better be very tight on your budgets and have them all nailed down. Sales, starts, closings, gross margin, SG&A, your convert rate on your backlog, certainly net pre-tax income, and then your balance sheet, what that's going to be. All those hard targets is what I would call those. They all need to be very dialed in by the first week or so of December.
Okay, so we've had a period of negotiation and a tug of war playing out, and we've come to accept that we have to hit X, Y, and Z for our KPIs for the next year. I'm not going to get into the discussion of what that discussion is like, but let's say that we've done that and we've got to this stage. We're in December at the moment, Rob. We are finishing 1 year, coming to the end of 2024, and we're looking at the new year. What did this December period look like for you to make sure that you're going to execute and hit your goals, not for this year and leaping into next year?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a keen focus on new communities that were opening. How can we accelerate them from, let's say, Q3 in the new fiscal year to Q2 or Q1? What might we be able to do to accelerate? We don't have any new flags opening, new communities opening until Q3, and we cannot pull them up. All right, so what could we do with the existing communities? Let's say that we had 40 and 45-foot lots that we were building one product on. Could we split that? And could we put the slightly bigger, let's say 1,500 to 2,200 square feet on the 45-foot lots, and on the 40s, could we bring in our smaller 1,000 to 1,450-foot product? And could we put that on the smaller ones? And so now we take one lot size and we put two products on it. Might we be able to get a third or 50% more sales because of that move? It was all eyes on how do we expand the flags that we have, one way or the other. The whole game turns, the worm as it is, turns on this thing, community count. You're not going to be able to grow sales if you don't have growth in your community count. It's simply impossible. So unless you do some innovative things, like again, taking a lot size and instead of having one product, having two, maybe there's something that is ready to develop and you go smaller with your product there. Maybe you bring two phases online. Maybe you can't get there in the first 6 months of the new year, but you can get there in the beginning of the third quarter of the new fiscal year. And so, or go find, plug and play, takedown deals. You're going to pay up. Those are retail deals. They're not wholesale like equity deals are. But, maybe you could go do that. It's late, and most, takedown deals have plenty of competition. So that's not very likely. But you got to go boil the ocean. You got to go try everything conceivable and impress me at the regional level that you have done exactly that. You've been comprehensive in your search for more communities, more flags, or accelerating the sales in a given community that you have had by bringing in another product or look at it and go, you know what, our margins are good. I can give up a little margin to accelerate my pace. And a lot of builders follow this strategy. It's all about pace, not as much about margin. We just want to turn our assets. Certainly the Lennars and Hortons of the world, they live and die with an asset turn model. Turn the assets, turn the assets. So let's not fall in love with margin. Let's manage to pace, manage to our velocity per community. And that's the best way for us to hit the targets that we have on sales and delivery growth and to be profitable and get operating leverage, meaning keep your SG&A low and lever into greater revenues. So anyhow, those are ways that I would have been talking about all of that from probably September through that point in December, and looking for their innovative ideas and what they might do. There's always a way. They've just got to go find them.
As the regional, who's involved in those innovation strategy sessions? And how did you drive that session? Was it tell me your ideas, or was it here's all my ideas, go and execute?
First of all, as a regional, you find yourself increasingly further and further away from the battlefield. And so it's never a wise idea, even though you've thought about this for decades, it's never a wise idea to be top down and say, shut up and eat. This is what I want you to do. And I don't need your ideas. Now, my first boss out of grad school, when I got into the home building industry, this is, approaching 35 years ago. I sat in meetings each morning at 7 a.m. where he basically said that I know more about this effing business than you'll ever effing know. So just do what I'm effing telling you to do. And he was good. There's no question about it. He was way my senior and had built the company into a pretty big regional powerhouse. But his front door was a revolving front door because nobody wants to work for very long in that kind of environment. They want to bring their own creative ideas to the table and hash them out and be part of that strategy, that decision-making process. And so this is where I formulated my own personal strategy as to leadership and management. And that is, I remember thinking in those 7 a.m. meetings, if I ever get the chance to lead, I'm not going to do it this way. This is the polar opposite of what I want to do. What I wanted to do is look around the table and say, you men and women are good. You've been in this industry now for long enough. Here's the challenge. We don't have enough community count. We can't drive sales the way we need to, and ultimately deliveries the way we need to. What would you recommend? I'm listening. I want to hear your ideas because I want you to be a part of this. I don't have all the answers. I have some. I could tell you what I want you to do, but I want to hear what you think. How would you handle this? That to me is a 21st century, more enlightened approach to leadership and the shut up, do what I'm telling you to do. I
Mm.
know this industry, you don't. That's unenlightened, uninspired, and you'll never retain your top talent. Just won't do it.
And that can be, that can be replicated whether you're a division president or whether you're a VP of land, VP of purchasing, talking to your own team, getting
Yes.
their input into ideas. In terms of, so give me a comparison, yeah. So what's the A player leader doing at the moment, and what's the C player leader doing at the moment?
That's good. That's a very good question because they are quite different. And you'll understand my conclusion, therefore, in a second. Um, the A player is saying, all right, this is going to be interesting. I don't know how we're going to get there. What do you guys think? So he's the division president who says to his team exactly what I think is enlightened, and that is, come on, we got to figure this out. We're weeks away, a couple of months away from needing to go execute on this new fiscal budget. And we're behind. We're showing 5% growth. We need to be at 12, 13, 15% growth. How do we get there? What would it look like? Land, tell me what you would recommend. What do you think? If we were to go pull this off, what would have to happen? Okay,
Great
sales,
question.
what would have to happen if we were to go pull this off? What do you think? Give me your ideas. I don't know, doesn't count. You've got ideas, let me hear them. While you're doing this, of course, you're evaluating the involvement, the commitment of your team, your VP or director of sales, construction, purchasing, land development, land acquisition, your CFO. If they're in it and they're thinking and they're dedicated to driving your division forward, they're going to have plenty of ideas. If they're disengaged, if they have nothing inspiring to say, nothing creative, I just tuck it away in the back of my mind. That may be an issue in my new fiscal year. Is I have someone who once was good, perhaps, but now
Mm.
they're not. They're not as engaged. I don't sense the passion and the commitment from them. Anyhow, the A player says, we're going to figure this out. He engages his team, and they have a schedule now of meeting weekly just to talk about how we're going to get to 12% growth. Okay. The C player uh, is probably disengaged because he's
Mm.
thinking, this is stupid. I can't do that. We can't do that. 5% is as good as it gets. This is an impossible ask. The mothership always is cramming down growth on us that we don't want. I kind of liked, 2-3% growth. That's comfortable. I can manage that. If I'm going to go manage for 12% growth, I got to go, hire more people. That's a hassle. I don't want to do that. So this is why C players are tricky in organizations, Gerard, because
Mm.
typically the C player is seasoned and they know how to get things done, right? But in
Yeah.
terms of innovation, creativity, being on the deal, they're not. And they're the very ones who, once you get into the fiscal year and it gets tough sledding and you find yourself behind your budgeted numbers because what you were given from the mothership and from the regional represented a stretch goal. We don't want people just barely hitting a number or getting to a number that was too soft, too light, too uninspired. We want people to reach for growth. And
Mm.
so they're the very ones when things get tough, they say, I knew we couldn't do this. I told you we couldn't do this. This was a bad idea. We should have never committed to this budget. That's the C player. Now, if you want to say that to me in September, October, November, maybe not so much the first week of December, I'm done by that point. But if you want to say
Yeah.
that early in the cycle, the budget cycle for the new fiscal year, I'm open to that. I want to hear your criticism, but I'm also likely to say you had to grow up to be the VP of construction or the VP of sales. You're here by choice. This is what we do. If you
Mm.
wanted a more, subdued job, you should have gone to work for the city or the county or the state or the federal government. That would be an easier job. All you have to do then is make sure you spend every dollar that you had in your budget, so you get the chance to get that much, if not more, in the new fiscal year. But you decided to be in public home building. This is what we do. So now you got to go grow. You got to go figure this out. And the C player often doesn't want to do that. They represent, therefore, at least a braking mechanism for the division that you don't need. You need to be running full throttle, running
Mm.
fast. You don't need to be braking. You don't need somebody who's toxic to the organization, because at the water cooler, they're saying, these guys are idiots. At the regional level, the corporate level, what I mean, how in the world are we supposed to do that? And they're a leader. So other people in the organization then take their cue from them. Let's assume that they're a VP of Land Ac, or some
Mm.
companies combine those, Land Ac and Land Development, into one. So they're that. It could be any position. It could be the
Yeah.
director of sales, but they're slow to get on the deal, if they ever do. They love to criticize, and those people, those C players, really need to go. As good as they are, as seasoned as they are, as deep as they are in relationships, they need to go somewhere else where they can be bright, or be a downer, be a negative, be somebody who's the constant naysayer, but it should not be in your company. That does lead me to, I was talking about hard targets and executing hard targets, but there are a number of soft targets that one has
Mm.
to manage too as well. Now, these are areas where you'll likely have conversations with your RP, but probably not the mothership. And what would this
Mm.
be? The RP is going to be closer to your staffing needs and what departments you are skinny in, and you're short one person or short two people. Okay, so each division president is discussing with the regional president staffing needs. And they're also talking about top grading, which means who are the A players, and the ones that are leading the charge. They would wade through hell with a water pistol for you if you said, I need to get this done. They're that caliber of person. Totally on it, on the deal, in it, ready to attack. Adas, adas, toujours adas. That's them. But there are B players that are not quite that in it, energized, ready to go attack, but they're good. And they just need more training, more time, and they can
Mm.
grow from B to A players. Those are the ones you want to keep. Definitely the A players are sacrosanct. You never, ever, ever lose an A player. And if you do, you had dang well better been pushing a solution, searching for a way to keep that person on the team. It will happen from time to time, but the A players are sacrosanct. You do not mess with A players. The B players you don't want to lose either, because that's your future A, and
Mm.
they're very capable. They're good. They're curious. They're smart. They got great attitudes, and they perform well in their jobs. They just don't know quite yet all that they need to know. So A players, B players, part of the discussion with the RP and the DP about who they are. I wanted to identify who the A players and the B players were. Of course, then we would inevitably have a conversation about the C and D players. The D players not only hate the company, they hate the culture of the company, and are constantly complaining, but they're terrible at what they do. So they're inept, and they have bad attitudes. And so they should have never been hired to begin with. And if they are with your team, still with on your team, somebody should be shot for continuing to employ them. So that's the D player. The C player is the one we were talking about. They're good, they're
Yep.
seasoned, they're capable, but just have too much negativity towards the company, the management of the company, too critical of them, and that represents a toxic um, element that has to be removed, I think.
And then, just to wrap this one up, so driving and motivating the team forward so that when it lands on the, I don't know what day it is this year, the 3rd or 4th of January, when everybody's back in the office,
Mm-hmm.
how do we make sure that the team arrives and hits the ground running?
So this leads back to kind of a fundamental question, and that is, in my mind at least, is what's the DP like? Because I always knew that the DP would recruit after her or his kind. Okay, so if you are a gung ho, let's go way through hell with a water pistol to get this thing done, let's find a way. It's going to be tough. We're probably going to get dinged up. We may even get bloody, but by God, we are going to give this a run. We're going to stretch, we're going to reach for it because we're on the team, we're fully engaged, and that's our job. If the DP is like that, I know a couple of things. Number one, he's going to surround himself with men and women on his senior management team that view the world just like him. Because we always recruit people that we're the most comfortable with. And so the DP is going to build his or her team. And that's exactly what he is going to surround him herself with. People that he feels comfortable with, that run fast like he runs. And so I know that. And then I also know that they are going to recruit people for their teams, construction, sales, purchasing, whatever silo they're in, that they feel comfortable with. Well, that's people who run fast, who are in high attack mode, fully energized, fully engaged, come to the office ready to kick ass, and either get to number one in the market or stay number one because it feels good to be king. Okay, so that means that if the DP is right and he's done a good job of recruiting, then you don't have to worry about them hitting the ground running on January the 3rd or 4th. That's their nature, Gerard. That's what they do. That's who they are. I remember having a friend way back in the day at UT, one of my, I guess, three different degree quests there. And I remember that it was a Friday night and he had left his backpack in the chemistry lab. And so he
Mm.
went up there and it was about 9:30, 10 o'clock. He was able to, the doors were open. At least when I was going through school, that's probably no longer the case, but he was able to go in, went into the classroom and found his backpack where he had left it at his seat, and then noticed that the professor was in the lab next door. And he poked his head in and said, Professor so-and-so, what are you doing here? It's a Friday night and it's like 10 o'clock. And he said, son, you're just passing through, but this is what I do,
Mm.
right? This is what I do. So the hour meant nothing. The day of the week meant nothing. It's what he did. And I wanted people who said, I grow things. We attack. We're going to run fast. This is going to be a very high wall to get over, but what the heck? This will be fun. Don't know how we're going to do it.
You ever had those conversations, the first business meeting of the year, whatever it may have been? Did you find yourself almost doing a motivational speech? Did you ever plan
Well,
that, or did you plan it did you have that at the end of the year with the whole division, or?
yeah, what we would do at the beginning of the process, and perhaps you asked this earlier and I didn't answer it, the way we began the budgeting process is that we would have monthly reviews with each division, monthly reviews, and then weekly calls with all DPs. But in my region, it was a monthly review, and then we did quarterly reviews as well, which is a much bigger, more comprehensive review. But in those months, beginning in the summer, the new budget would come up and the expectations for growth would come up. And then there was the rational look at their community count and where it was at that moment, let's say in June or July, where it would be at the end of the year, what new flags would be opening up towards the end of the current year or the right at the beginning, because that's where you could get deliveries. If you're not open by the end of the first quarter, the odds of you getting deliveries, unless you're selling small homes, is pretty low. You certainly would have to be there by the turn, by the end of the second quarter. You'd have to be open for sales. But if I really wanted to, I could get sales even in Q3, an opening of a new community in Q3. We certainly could get sales, but there are no deliveries. I needed both, right? So especially if we were behind and needing to grow. So anything that was supposed to open up at the end of Q2 needed to open up at the end of Q1 and so forth. We had to get them opened sooner than later. But we would look at community openings and community closes, and then what those that had a long runway ahead of them, we would look at all of that and look at the pace and look at the environment, look at what was happening with interest rates, look at what was happening with the macroeconomy, and then say, yep, we think it's possible for us to add to this by increasing sales. We may have to give up some margin to do it. But again, we pursued the business model of asset turns and pace over margin. Okay. So we have those discussions every month. And then as we got closer to December, that would consume a greater portion of the reviews because we wanted needed to know that they were fully locked in on the new budget and were doing everything they needed to do to get where they needed to be.
And then just we run way over time for this one, which I'm not bothered about. But did each member of staff have whether it's monthly, quarterly, or annual review to set themselves up so they knew the direction of their career? If they achieved X, they got a chance of promotion, and to keep each individual team member focused.
Well, okay, so this is where the division president really earns his keep because he has to, once he understands from me what the objective is at the corporate level for growth, then or other targets, maybe they're in big balance sheet management mode. Maybe they're in, hey, take your balance sheet and go off balance sheet with it with land banks to increase our return on assets. There are all kinds of targets that may be handed down. But once it's clear, then the division president has to meet with each director or VP, depending on what you call them in your company, VP or director. We're pretty much synonymous in our world, I think, in most home building operations. And so the DP had to meet with each one of them to say, okay, purchasing, we're going to have to give up some margin to hit these sales numbers in order to satisfy the mothership in the new fiscal year. So that means that you got to find a way to go get us 3%. You got to find a way to lower our COGS, cost of goods sold, by 3%, because we're going to have to give up probably easily 2-3% with buy downs, with buyer bonuses, with realtor bonuses, incentives, in order to increase the sales pace. Because we don't have the community count, that means there's only one solution: more sales per community. We've looked at it. We can't do anything to add to our community count, nor can we create a new product line within our existing communities. So now there's only one way: give up some margin, increase the pace. And so you have to help us in purchasing to get 3% or 5%. Then he would meet with Land Act and land development and say to Land Act, we got no ACC growth this year. That cannot happen again. You guys have got to go take the gloves off and go spin up our community count, new takedown deals, new equity deals. We'll find the money you need to go get us, 10, 15 new land deals beyond those where, you're already planning for the closeout of existing flags. And then perhaps he would meet with a construction a VP and say, "You're doing a great job, but your build times are too slow." And now, if we have hopes of getting more deliveries out of each community, we have to contract the cycle time, the build time of 20 communities, 25 communities, and these 10 were too slow. And so, what can you do to decrease our cycle time? Get your trades in here. What's wasteful? What's slowing them down? Bring in your MEP, bring in your other key trades, and have them tell us what we could do to shrink that 120-day build time down to 90. Okay, so
Right.
that's his job as the DP, is to meet with every silo and have them set up their own budget for their department that leads to the mothership's targets, the division's targets, and then the region's target and the mothership's target. But then they have their own things that they need to get done. So
Mm.
this is the beauty, in my view, of Measure What Matters by John Doerr, who used to work for Andy Grove at Intel. Andy Grove taught him everything that he knew about innovation and creativity. And as Andy Grove once said to him, it almost doesn't matter what you know, it's only what you do with what you know that matters. And from there, John Doerr took these ideas, wrote the book, most importantly, used them in his career in venture capital. He made a $12 million investment in a little company that was operating out of a garage in Palo Alto. They had a $120 million market cap at that time, so he took 10% of the company, obviously. And that little company is worth 3 something trillion today, and they are known as Google. So this is the stuff of scaling objectives and key results. And the OKRs happen at the corporate level, the regional level, the division level, and each silo has their own objectives and key results. The objective meaning the goal to support
Mm.
what the division president wants. And the key results are the milestones, the things that have to get done in order for that goal of, let's say, in purchasing, finding 3% in cost savings on the stick and brick side. That's how it's going to get done. The objective is save 3%. The key results are, well, I'd have to get all the trades in here early in the year. I'd have to let them all know that we need 3%. And if they can give us more, give us more. Some will want to negotiate that over a couple of month period of time. But my job at the department level is to make sure that this, whatever we do, rolls up to a 3% stick and brick savings in order to help the division president get more pace per community, which will involve him lowering his margin expectation. So I talk fast, and this is probably more detailed than you wanted to get into, Gerard, but does that make sense?
No, I love it. It's perfect. It's perfect. 100% makes sense. So look, we've still got more to discuss in the series moving forward. This isn't it. I know there's some things we can touch on in a little bit more depth, and we might do that later in the series. But if I try to summarize that, there is a lot. But first of all, yeah, set out your OKRs, your objectives, key results, yeah, negotiate them with the mothership, and then commit to hitting those targets. Sit down with your team, yeah, be creative and work out as a team how you're going to hit these key results. Lead like an A player, not a C player, yeah, and cut
Mhm.
your C players ASAP, because with them in the team, you're not going to hit your targets.
I was going to add one thing, and that is that this actually comes from Jack Welch, who was the CEO, chairman of the board of General Electric for 20 years, added phenomenal shareholder wealth over that period of time. The share prices went up by over 3,000% under his watch. And so, something I heard him say one time that really resonated with me is he said, each year I would imagine that I was flying in to the corporate office for GE. And I would imagine that I was the new CEO, replacing the prior idiot who didn't get things done, wasn't efficient, didn't drive growth, would commit to targets and then not execute. And so I'm the guy he was imagining who would replace the old CEO. And he knew all those hotspots, the things that were not going well, that the old CEO did not address. He didn't deal with them, make them go away, improve them, whatever. He knew he should have, but he didn't do it. I'm the new guy who knows that. I'm coming in to fix all the crap that he screwed up and the mess that he left behind. Now, the new CEO was Jack Welch, and the old CEO was Jack Welch. But he played this bit of mental gymnastics in his head to look critically, objectively at the problems his organization faced. And he wanted to view those issues as what would a new incoming CEO immediately do? Like, in the first couple of weeks, what would he implement? Those are the things that I should do right now. Because if I don't do those things right now, then there will be a new CEO coming, and his name will not be Jack Welch. It'll be someone else. So I always thought that was a good way to start a new fiscal year. What was the idiot before me doing as a division president when I was one, or a regional president when I was one? What was he doing? What didn't he do that needed to be done? What are those things that were just ridiculous, or he dragged his feet on them, or he just shuffled it. He kicked the can. And let me go do those things right now so I don't run the risk of being replaced. Maybe this is a mindset for all the DPs and VP director level folks to adopt as they come into their new fiscal year, which is just around the corner.
On that note, Jack Welch is also the CEO who said that his most important job that he had was finding talent and nurturing talent. And if you are going to hit those targets, you need the A players. Yeah. So anyway, see you next time and see you all soon.